In CQB environments, corners are, well, literally around every corner. So it's vital that we know not only how to get around them, but also when it's the best time to utilize a certain technique. So in today's lesson, we'll be going over the most opportune moments to use certain cornering techniques, as well as a couple of different skills that we haven't gone over yet. As we're progressing through the field, we need to make sure that we're keeping our thinking dynamic throughout all of this, so we can always be adjusting and making the best decision for the current environment. Now, the way we're going to split this up is actually through the awareness level of the contacts that we'll be engaging. To keep things simple, we'll just simulate that there's only one enemy around the corner. He doesn't look like he's messing around. There are three situations we'll be exploring. Neither person is aware of the other, you are aware of them, and finally the case where you are aware of each other. And yes, it's kind of difficult to figure out if the enemy actually knows where you are unless you're shot at already, but sometimes you just kind of know. One scenario we could be coming across is where both players are completely oblivious to each other. In this case, we want to be using things like shadows, sound, maybe even vibrations through the floor can let you know that an enemy is close. The goal during this time is to keep ourselves concealed while also trying to learn as much information about the enemy as possible. If we don't learn any information, then it's probably best that we just carry on with a slow, methodical, slice-based entry. We would like to mention that dynamic entries are very much an option for some of the items on this list, but we'll be covering that in another video. So let's go back for a second and assume that we figured out that there is an enemy around the corner. What we absolutely need to be doing now is building on the element of surprise, and we have to remember that with every second that passes, our advantage diminishes. A dynamic entry can work wonders here, and honestly, if you have a grenade, that can be perfect because it completely reduces the risk to you. Now, in our previous video about corners, we mentioned that peeking while you're accessing your sights can be useful in some situations, and this is definitely one of them. Now, because we know where the enemy is, we can actually access our sights before we go around the corner and take the shot as soon as we see them. Now, just because you're looking through your sights, that absolutely does not excuse you from verifying your target, so please make sure that you're shooting at the right person before you pull the trigger. Now, let's say in this scenario, as we're slicing the corner, we start taking fire. When this first happens, there's going to be a sense of shock, surprise, and our flinch reaction can even kick in. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as we're aware of it and we work it into our training. Now, once we take fire, we should be falling back to a more secure angle to break that initial contact. Once we've broken visual range, now our goal is to try to flip the tables so they're reacting to us and we're not reacting to them. One of the best ways to do this is just to abandon the corner and go to another location altogether so they have to completely reorient themselves. But that isn't always an option, so what do? Well, this brings us to a technique that we lovingly call the snap peek. Now, we were actually reminded of this technique from a comment, so thank you so much for that. Now, one of the best parts about the snap peek allows us to transition from being attacked to being the aggressor. The initial peeking is the most risky part of this entire maneuver, as we're not going to have our gun up. We're literally just poking our head out for a split second to gain the information about where the enemy is. In Airsoft, if you factor in human reaction time and the slower traveling ammunition, you actually can get away with this maneuver in CQB a lot more often than you might think. Now, one thing that's very critical is as we pop out to shoot at them again, we cannot come from the same position. If we peek from here, then this is where the eyes of the enemy are going to be looking. So ideally, we want to be coming from anywhere else. Always try to keep them guessing, but make sure that when you pop out to actually take the shot, that you don't keep yourself exposed for too long because you've already triggered the room and most of their attention is going to be on this corner. Now, the main problem with this is that if we peek a corner where we haven't actually already been spotted, then we just gave up our element of surprise. We don't really suggest that you do this technique in the situations where you're pressed for time or where you need to take over control of an area. If you learned anything today, then we'd absolutely love it if you became a part of our community of Airsoft academics. It's as easy as hitting that subscribe button and we'd absolutely appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching. As always, class is dismissed. Please wait for plane. Oh yeah, just take your time, buddy.